The first capillary bed will drain the nutrients, the second will process it. Okay? That is the reason also, students, you always give medication intravascular or intravenous. You know why? Why do we always give medications intravenous, not intra-arterial? Ano ba? IV dyan ay gamito na intravenous. Why not intra-arterial? IA. Ay, AI, Doc. May mo naman na sa inyo. Ha? Mami sa liver? Not really. Ano. Don't ask why we give it sa vein. Ask why we don't give it sa artery. So,
Pabalik siya sa heart. Keep tanan per sa vein kaya mag-distribute na isang vein. Charing.
Charing.
So if you give medication to an artery, that's correct. The artery will bring that blood that has the medication into that surrounding tissue. And that medication will be sequestered. Sequestered means it will stay in the tissue. It will not distribute throughout the body. But if you give a medication through the vein, that will actually spread around the body because that vein will eventually go to the heart and the heart will spread it throughout the body. Do you follow? Right? Second reason is, I said there are three reasons. Second reason is, it's also very hard to find a artery. Like I said, they're deeper within the body itself. Okay? And third reason is, you're not able to give medications through an artery because the pressure is so great. So, kahit ka na, dagong mo i-tuslo. Okay? Huh?
Wala pa.
Kaway sa elephant.
Usually, ang pinaka-closest thing to an arterial medication that I know of is intracardiac. Okay? So, kita mo ng intracardiac, igana pa lang mo daan, kuha na, mo spill ang blood, tungo sa puso sa pressure, na imo ding iduot pag-ayon.
Pusag ko.
Ha?
Ipusok ko ang heart.
Go to socket.
Katong pag, at pag,
Utilize mo.
compact.
Okay? Did you follow? Follow mo? Okay, next slide. So, next is the lymphatic system. Okay? So, sa lymphatic system, so like I said, your venous system is not perfect. A lot of the fluids of your venous system actually stays in the, actually is left in the cardiovasculars or the tissue. So, it's the job of the lymphatic system to make sure that those are returned to your fluids, right? Unfortunately, because of the nature of lymphatic fluids, it's not blood, right? So that lymphatic fluids doesn't actually have WBC. The problem with that is any form of infection that gets into the body through the lymphatic system will be able to escape the WBC. That is where your lymph nodes comes in. Although the itself, the lymphatic vessels don't have they do not have WBC. The lymph nodes do have WBC. Okay? And once those lymph nodes have WBC, they will filter the lymph, preventing any pathogen from ever advancing to the body. Any questions? Okay? By the way, Doc, question. Doc, what's the significance of hepatic portal vein? It's common in chickens, right? Mamana mo drug administration sa pharma? Ano ba? Drug administration. Pharma 1. Kamu may estudyante. Ako lang, drug administration mo, Pharma 1. I don't know kung yun. Pharma 1, right? What's the preferred drug of choice for giving IM in chickens?
Thighs.
Thighs.
I like part.
That's where
Ay,
you
sa breast
don't
di ay.
give medication.
Sa breast, sorry.
Wings.
Breast.
Okay.
Sa breast.
So, no, kung ano hindi pa pwede guys, ang reason at significance of lymphatic portal vein is the same reason why you cannot give injections to the thigh of the animal. You know why? It's not that the animal will die, it's because that medication will become useless. Why? Imagine this. Let's change this one. Let's change this into a kidney. Right? Let's change it into a kidney. And suddenly you gave a medication to the veins. Right? Or, yung yata IM, right? IM. Intramuscular, right? So you change this into the breast. Or you change it into the thigh. Thigh may gusto ni baby. I don't know why. Thigh. You change this into thigh. That's where you're not supposed to give it. Right? Thigh. Change this to kidney. Okay? So if you give an injection through here, it is absorbed by the capillaries and it goes into the kidney. The problem is your kidney is an organ of excretion. Any medication you give to the thigh will go first to the kidney before it can be spread to the body. That is why you won't give medications for chickens in the thigh. You always give them to the breast. Because in the breast, there is no such thing as that kidney for opening the breast of the chicken. It's only the lower extremities. So if you give medication here, it will spread throughout the body through the venous system. But if you do it on the legs, the kidney will take over and the stomach will, the thigh will also not be affected in giving medication. Do you follow? Very good, let's continue. So lymphatic system, lymphatic vessels are conducting spaces. Remember, lymphatic vessels have flaps as well in order to fight gravity. And secondly, they also rely on the rise and fall of the chest and the milking action of the skeletal muscles. Next. So this is the lymphatic vessel. So many vessels, show little time. Okay? Yes. So, wala kong kita lymphatic. By the way, students, when you're assessing for lymph nodes, it's normal for an animal to have a lymph node. Again, it is normal for an animal to have a lymph node. It becomes abnormal if it's swollen. Lumibag siya na abnormal. Hindi na kayo, dokit mo, na siya lymph node, By the way, always remember, chickens do not have lymph nodes. Okay? Their myth, the vegan myth of having eaten chicken necks because of the lymph nodes, Dusay, that's not true. It's not physiologically and anatomically accurate. Okay? Because chickens do not have lymph nodes. It's common in mammals and other animals, but not chickens. Birds. Okay? Any questions so far? So, mga very important lymph nodes. Next. The blood. Any questions so far? Sa conducting spaces. Next is the blood. The blood. Okay? Do you know why Dracula talks like, I can suck your blood? Diba mo na?
May kisayza o?
Yes, I from Transylvania. Diba? Do you know why Dracula talks like that?
Naman siya
So, siya eh?
Ansa?
wala.
Ansa, Philip?
Don't be racist, Philip November. Because, he's from Transylvania because he talks like that because he cannot close his mouth properly. Naman siya fans. Diba? Diba? Like, I will suck your blood. Diba? Because he can't do that to his lips because masamad siya. Okay? Wala mo ba? Wala mo ba? Gusto mo ba? Wala mo si Murta siya. Masamad yung lips. Tala na siya. Ano mo sa niya? Diba? Paano yung Kita.
Hilas ko na.
Dracula fan?
Hindi ba ito siya nga na musturya to?
Pagka Pennsylvania lang yun.
Kailangan mo sila. Give me a fresh money. Anyway, so the blood is the life force of the Juan, di ba? In old times, they used to call it the ichor. The ichor. Okay? I don't know, don't go into.
Sige.
So, alternative connective tissue that carries substances throughout the body. So, it's an atypical connective tissue. Still, a connective tissue. It is called an atypical connective tissue because only under certain conditions will it become a connective tissue. Under normal conditions, it is not. That's why it's called atypical. Like any connective tissue, blood has a brown substance, and that brown substance for blood is called fibrin. 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 At least yung blood ay brain. Kasi fibrin. Right? Okay? Sorry na ako mga joke. Kasi wala naman ako na. How did I ever survive that? Diba? Ako, maasa mo sa... Ako, kita ko sa akong sa estudyante ko. Karoon ako ng estudyante, yan ako.
Lagi daw. Hapit mo dun eh.
Ha? Serious kayo mo mga estudyante mo eh? Ano? Grabe mga serious like...
Dok, lisod kayo mo exam book. Hindi siya
Mayatap sa
serious.
may basta di may
Sa di may mag-serious.
Pausa. Sabog tayo kay...
Samot.
Ang teacher. Eh, nani ang teacher sa una? Mag-ana na siya. Mag-storya. Kami eh. Yeah, namay yung pay. Isang pasikat ko on. Dili kay igingaw pa rin yung pay. Mag-quiz ta ma. Dapat ready na mo. Guys, quiz ko po eh. Ha? So, ha? Guys, kung ba mo investment, it's what? It's not impossible. Ha? Kita mo na, so fail. Kuha, nasa yung tubangan. Human maging ko na, sus, kaya yun lang mo. What you di klaro? What you di klaro kung estudyante sa una? Like, grabe yun. Like, wala kayo, kaya honor, dishonor, di ko sa mong pamilya eh. Kung ano man, naman ka sa high school out of 50, ka 36 to, 38, at least pasa. Nako sa, dati ko sa lower end spectrum. Okay, so, okay, what about, then, training mo ko sa wellness na magsigit yung toon. Kaya kabaw mo ko ako mga kuyog, mga mutant. Oo. Grabe na. Menes ka sa una, ako mga classmate, mga mutant. Kaya na. Uy, ikata na part sa ako.
Kung mag-play na ako, Dok.
Ha?
Balik sa computer.
Uy, ikata part na ako. Ikata sa lesson na na. Problema na ito sa wanang hari. Hindi sila nakita. Anyway, then always remember, in order for fibrin to fall with gravity, you need to use anticoagulants. Okay? Kung once ka rin coagulate na siya, good luck trying to separate those. Actually, mas dali siya i-separate. So, para kumuklap ng siya, it becomes heavier, so mas mahug siya. Pero, buhin mo na isang blood. Sabat mo? If you're going to extract serum, you are going to use unheparinized na tube. Kanang red, right? Ikamot ana, by the time mo na siyang ipaset, ang blood ana will start na coagulate, right? Then, once it becomes coagulated, it becomes heavier. It will go down. But if you're going to do exams with the blood, ang kanang blood cells itself, you cannot anymore do that. Okay? So, mo na siyang drawback. Mo na red or purple dyan ang tumito ng basta o dugo. Okay? Next. Red blood components. You have your red blood cells, white blood cells, of course, your platelets. Platelets. Okay, so na maghinay din mo o blood smear. Buwak niya ang platelets. Okay, so first is the RBC. White blood cells, of course, platelets, or platelets. So, mga sila, right? You already know that picture from a long time ago. Right? So, favorite na natin, favorite natin, isa na favorite na. Hindi mo ganang topic about blood. Malimot yung topic sa blood. Okay? Feel ako, medical picture mo, like feel ako elder vampire. Like, imagine ka, like, mataas na din yung feel niya, yung elder vampire, hindi pwede, no? Anyway, like, hindi mo take fantasy something. Elder vampire. Ano ba si elder vampire?
Tiguang ka bang?
Tiguang na naman.
Hi ka, Brian.
Saan ninyo eh? Yes, so, lain na sila, di ba? Vampires are immortal, right? So aging doesn't work on them. So the older you are, the more experience you gather. So the more powerful actually ang vampire mo katiguang. Those are called elder vampire, right? Anyway, so ano siya? Okay? Next. RBC carries oxygen to the blood by concave in most animals except in camelids. Okay? So there are, how many species of camelids do you know?
4.
4, what are those? Lamas. Lamas, kaya isa ko sa itlog. Lamas, eh?
Dromedary.
Jump. Those are the camels sila. But you also have your
Vicuña.
vicunias, your alpacas, and your lamas. Okay, ang lamas, mga example sa egg fried rice. Oh yeah.
Lamas.
Okay, so, their corn are biconcave, but they are anucleated. Okay? Anucleated. Okay? Mostly nucleated for birds. So, sayot na siya, mostly nucleated for birds. Meaning, naay nucleus ang sa birds. Okay? Do you know the reason for that? By the way, also shapes of birds, spherical as well. Okay? So, birds, mostly nucleated as well. Okay? And because they are nucleated, they still have nucleus. By the way, kumawa mo sa reason na?
Sa
Cover control.
Yeah. Ang reason nila is the enucleation process does two things. One, of course, removes the nucleus. Okay? The second reason is that actually gives the unique biconcave shape. Okay? And do you know what's the advantage of a biconcave instead of a regular RBC? Because that biconcave disc ensures that the surface of the RBC has a high surface area. Okay? Remember, the hemoglobin, the one that carries the white blood, the oxygen, is not actually found inside the cell. They're actually found on the surface of it. The greater the surface area, the more hemoglobin can attach. The more hemoglobin can attach, the greater the oxygen carrying capacity. Okay? So in birds, they do not have that surface area. That is why they still have nucleus. Secondly, the absence of a nucleus means that the red blood cells cannot anymore reproduce. That's why they need to stem from the bone marrow. The bone marrow creates one called the reticulocytes, and the reticulocytes will eventually inoculate to remove the nucleus, and they become their biconcave shape. Okay? Next is, do you know that red blood cells do not have mitochondria? Okay? They do not have mitochondria. Their mitochondria is removed because if those red blood cells had a mitochondria, they might use the oxygen to create the electrons transport chain. So in order to ensure that they do not have the necessary one to consume that oxygen, they are in the absence of mitochondria. And RBC only get oxygen or energy through a process called glycolysis. Okay? Any questions? Okay. Next. Hemoglobin. A modified protein is a ferrous molecule. One molecule can carry up to 4 molecules of oxygen. So we all know that hemoglobin gives the blood its color, right? So, red. And also, it is because hemoglobin has an affinity to oxygen because of the presence of the iron molecules. But you all know that oxygen always has an affinity for iron. That is why your iron objects tend to rust and oxidize in the outside environment. They follow. Okay? By the way, in other animals such as your crustaceans, mga blue horseshoe crabs, they actually have blue blood. Okay, not the literally blue blood. Okay? Yes, because instead of iron, they have copper. And copper is blue. You can tell that by your Benedict solution, which is blue. Sa ganitong formula sa Benedict solution. Ito yung formula sa Benedict solution. Copper sulfide. Sulfate. Copper sulfate. So, saan copper? Pagka do you follow? By the way, unsa man ang blood na green?
Bayan.
Actually, blood na green is for plants. Their chlorophyll is actually green. Okay, because instead of any molecule, they have magnesium.
Yeah,
Kasi magnesium na pa.
Kasi ay ito.
Na mga components. Mga nag-leaves na.
Oh, green yung dugo.
Okay, saan pag naman?
Dugong verde siya.
Kung birthday na lang, so you're a plant.
Alam tawa siya, pig.
Ay, siya dugo.
Okay, any questions?
Putang siya.
That was beautiful. Everyone hates it.
Wala yung break po.
No break?
Ay,
You know, break. 10 minutes. Fine. Sige, break mo. Okay lang, okay lang.
Yeah.
Yung sabutan na lang yung lockdown mo.
Sigaw na ko ng anak do.
Take Roblox.
Minecraft.
Minecraft na lang ito.
Ang dala?
Pero kung ano yun,
Ayun mo ano yung...
Hanggang sila. Nakabili eh.
So this is the RBC I was talking about, right? So what is it, RBC? Next.
Platelet.
So unang kagad, tinapay na. And just burger. So unang kagad, tinapay na. Gusto na lang. Mahal sana. No, dito hindi ba sa ito? Ito puno. Anyway, ganun na. Kami nag-free. Gusto itong event mo na i-just burger yung pagkaon. Ano tao?
Jemesi ay ko ano.
Kung last year doon na, ito mga admission na, ito, General Assembly ba?
Oh, kato.
Yung okay na natin, ay, tao, nagmupat.
Nasa ito yung hotdog.
Take
That's so
calories
funny.
with that. Okay? Anyway, so the platelets, otherwise known as thrombocytes, originated from a cell called the megakaryocyte. The megakaryocyte originates from your bone marrow from the myeloid line. Myeloid line. Yes. So, inano niya, this is kung ano pinakpaspas na to na, kuhan, na, kaya view, ano eh. First, it starts off as a multipotent stem cell.
cell.
Then the multipotent stem cell divides into two germlines, right? You have your myeloid and your lymphoid line.
Reticulum.
Your myeloid line is where your reticulocytes come from. It's also where your granulocytes come from. But the most important one we're discussing now is the thrombocytes or the megakaryocyte. The megakaryocyte is a complete cell. When they eventually fragment into smaller subunits, they are called platelets or your thrombocytes.
Ito siya one ko ah.
Any questions? Responsible for the clotting or hemostasis. Has an effect on the oncotic pressure. Remember, these are cells. Cells are mostly made up of proteins. As proteins, they exert an attractive force towards water. That attractive force collectively will create oncotic pressure. That is why most animals that have thrombocytopenia or low levels of platelets have edema as well. Usually, mo patay sa animal. Ehrlichia, usually mamatay due to respiratory distress, secondary to pulmonary edema. Because if their platelet becomes so low, especially kung Ehrlichia anaplasma, RBC and platelet become so low, water starts to escape to the intravascular space. Especially the lungs you target. So, muna, matingakan na ay crackles. Okay? So, before ako sa una, I was still young, clinician pa ko. 10 years na, almost 10 years lang po sa gani. So, tawag gani, natinga ko sa before we do CBC manually. Okay, wala pa ng advent of machines. Nanay machine pero they can afford ang school. So wala may nag-machine. So usually, ang mga clinician, manual CBC ramen, amo nang suwatan, right? There's nothing wrong with that. Ayaw mo sa me. So, natinga ko sa una, doon pa din sa kukauban. Dapat yun yung platelet. Ay, ako nang gibuhat, naghimo na ako 5 ka smear. Then ako nang gilahi, ano, mo yung platelet. Naloy na sa supply pa ko sa una. Lloyd, nag-try na ko, Doc, fail. Wala lang na fail. Tawag ka CBC na sa HP. High precision. So ako yun, CBC, so pag-abot sa HP. Ang platelet ay 3. 3 out of 200. So, That was actually my first case of anaplasma. Okay? Karon, actually, ni-spread na din ang sakita ron, di ba? Surgery people, di ba? May kasagaran hagbungan sa yung iro, no? So, I can't blame you. Sa akong time, in 1 month, pinakadaghan na ng usa. So, sa ako, karon, 1 month, pinakadaghan na ng usa na white, negative. So, it's very rampant nowadays. Okay? So, mo na, reason mo mag-surgery, kaya of course, lobo mo platelet, wala, hemostasis. Hindi pa na mundag dugo, patay. So, mo na siya guys. Because once naabot ng 3 yung platelets, i-auscultate na ko yung lungs, kuan na, nanay edema. So, ganaana na. So, luoy kayo, ha? So, mo na, always educate your dog. Okay, vets don't cure anaplasma. Dapat patabang din mo sa owner because it's not only a disease that is a form of infection, it is a lifestyle. The moment gani, sige nagkaapakap po ito yung iro, ito na. Okay? And there's no cure for that. Example, kung nanaplasma na ka na, ayo ka, it's not like it won't return, it will return. So, mga na careful dyan ka ng mga butanga, ha? Next, responsible has an effect, smaller, colorless, disc-shaped objects. Next. So, where's the platelets? There, I'll find a new one. New picture. Okay? Next. Fibrin. Okay? Fibrin originated from the word fibrinogen. Guys, always remember, mabot naman dito, we will reach the enzyme levels na sa itong fibrin originated from the word fibrinogen, right? When you hear the word gen, it is the precursor. Gen comes from the word genesis, meaning to come from, right? So, fibrinogen, pepsinogen, angiotensinogen, usap na mga enzygen, actually are the precursor forms, and they're usually inactive. Okay? Inactive. Basta mga gen gani, inactive dyan na sila. Okay? Natin na yung people in gen. Okay, next, a specialized protein responsible for clotting. Always remember, students, your platelet is like a hollow block. You know what the hollow block is, right? Like the one I break, like, patchy level. Right? But hollow blocks, right? The one that your house is made of, right? Like any one, in order to make a house, you need more than hollow blocks. You need cement, right? Fibrin is the cement. You can have all the hollow blocks in the world. But if you do not have the right amount of fibrin, you will not succeed. Okay? And that fibrin needs to be activated before it can be used to anything. Okay? It is synthesized in the liver. That is why most animals with liver problems often have bleeding tendencies because of the inability to make fibrinogen. Acts as a form of cement in the clot formation. And together with the thrombocytes, they form hemostasis. Hemostasis is the verb to stop on bleeding, but the noun is thrombin or thrombite. Okay? Thrombite is the medical term for a clot. You form a thrombite, you form a clot. Again, hemostasis is the verb, action word. Thrombite is the noun. What is the result? Thrombite. Again, if you follow sa likod, follow mo. Okay, next. Coagulation clotting involves complex interconnected sequence of chemical reactions. The coagulation cascade. A step in the coagulation cascade is the formation in the plasma of thrombin, an enzyme that catalyzes the transformation of fibrinogen. Okay? So, the process of creating your fibrinogen to fibrin is quite complicated, but it is required for hemostasis. That entire process is called the clotting cascade. The clotting cascade. Next. Clotting cascade. The plasma portion of blood contains a collection of soluble proteins that act together in a cascade of enzymes, activation events, and culminating in the formation of a fibrin clot or a thrombin. Hemostasis is the normal process with which clotting cascade seals up a vascular damage related to blood conservation. The system of process that will result to hemostasis. Next. Oh yeah! Memorize na natin yung tanda. No excuses.
Weh.
Yeah,
Weh.
you will. You will memorize the clotting cascade. You will also memorize the clotting factors. That's how we go to China. Right? Now you have Lima na niyo. So you have to memorize. Huh? No joke, seriously, but seriously, dapat memorize na ninyo. By the way, there's no clotting factor number 6
Ano naman daw?
because it used to be part of clotting factor number 7. I did. They thought it was a different clotting factor, but it was just part of clotting factor number 7. Okay? So you need to memorize everything. Fibrinogen, prothrombin, tissue chromoplastin, calcium ions, label factor, anti-hemophilic factor, Christmas factor, Stewart factor, plasma riboplastin, antecedent, H1 factor of fibrin stabilizing factor. Okay, so memorize na ninyo ha. So may exam ta na this Friday.
Prep
Okay?
quiz daw.
Prep quiz. Wala pa kayo nigawas ang blood. Basig mo gawas na siya sa lab. Sa inyong lek, wala kayo nigawas ha. So careful lang. Okay?
Ito.
Next. Okay, so when there is the pieces, you also need to memorize the pathways. Good.
Let's
Wait
go.
lang ko na spirit ko.
Don't worry, don't worry. Guys, ayaw mo ito na. Okay? The only thing you need to memorize in this part is this. Okay? There are two parts of the clotting cascade. Okay? The intrinsic factor and the extrinsic factor. Okay? When the injury is into the blood vessels, that is the intrinsic factor or intrinsic pathway. If it's in the outside of the tissue, that is the extrinsic pathway. Okay? Did you follow? Follow mo? Tapos sa likod? Follow mo? Intrinsic or extrinsic pathway. Okay? After that, you just need to focus on this part here. Right? What happens is, in general, for both of them, the prothrombin reacts to the calcium in the blood in order for it to become thrombin. Meaning, the prothrombin is cleaved by the calcium ion or activated by the calcium ion, depending, then it will become thrombin. The thrombin will then react to the fibrinogen and create fibrin. Then the fibrin will react with the legal stable factor in order to create a more stable fibrin. Okay? All na dapat ninyo.
Asa to giriak ni fibrin?
I'm not going to ask you from...
Asa giriak ni fibrin?
Just
Asa giriak ni fibrin?
You only need to memorize.
Pinaka-last.
Okay?
Doc! Asa gani giriak ni fibrin? Asa si fibrin asa yung giriakan?
Di ba ang react siya sa fibrinogen para mahimog fibrin? Then ang fibrin after that, ang sign na
The fibrin will now create the mesh.
Mesh.
Cross-linking fibrin
Ika
mesh.
ng 8 to 8-1 dokot sana. Kanang after sa fibrin. Ang kanang iya ka na. Yes.
This is the 13th one.
Ay, 28 ako pagbasa.
Hala, di ka ba?
Ano ka bumabasa? V sa ng fire.
Fibrin stabilize. Go back to the slide. So, fibrin stabilizing factor.
No.
So, what kind of memorize na? Pero you need to memorize all the clotting factors. Sa clotting cascade, ako lang from the start of prothrombin, fibrinogen, fibrinogen to wala niya sa lab ang clotting pathway pero na ang clotting factors.
Akong giri.
Yes. Pumunta na nga sa doctor. Clotting factor number 5 is
Labile.
okay?
Dapat ba kanina na Doc? Kay
For accelerate.
Kana lang tanan Doc inuti po.
Any questions so far?
Nip.
No questions. They're great questions from you. No questions. Very good. Very good. Nobody teaches it like I do. Joke. Anyway, next is the leukocytes. Okay?
Glycolic science.
Okay, you know why they're called leukocytes?
Wala na. Because they are white blood cells.
because they're not erythrocytes. Okay? They're not erythrocytes or red blood cells, right? They're called leukocytes because ideally they're colorless.
Colorless.
But colorless is not yet a thing before during my ancient times. So they're calling them.
That's like granulocytes and granulocytes.
It's impossible not to have color. They need to have color. Separate colors, so many colors. Okay? So you already know that the granulocytes are divided into two distinct characteristics. The granulocytes and the granulocytes. So,
Granulocytes as neutrophils.
granulocytes are white blood cells that help the immune system fight off infection. They have characteristic morphology, having large cytoplasmic granules that can be stained by basic dyes and bilobe nucleus. Okay, bilobe nucleus. They are called neutrophils, eosinophils, and basophils. They're called phils because of their ability to love certain types of conditions or basic conditions. Okay, so let's continue. First is the neutrophil, right? Neutrophils constitute the largest percentage of white blood cells in most species except in ruminants. Because in ruminants, they only make up 20 to 25%. Neutrophils have a short lifespan in the blood, half-life of around 12 hours. But in tissue, their longevity increases to several days. So great. But neutrophils are approximately 12 UN in diameter with multi-nuclei and cytoplasmic granules. Excuse me.
Wala, hindi na naman yung siyang mga tao.
Kita mo.
Ay, si tabi. Dahil kami nun.
Whoever's watching this is for you guys. I love
Si Philip,
you.
nalibangan.
Okay,
Wait, oh.
Nagilap lang ako sa
Okay, so neutrophils are mostly one. They're called neutrophils or also known as segmenters because their nucleus appeared bilobe. Okay? So by the way, the more segments they have, the older they are. Okay? So next. Neutrophils are considered the first responder cells to combat invading antigens. The primary function of neutrophils to capture and destroy antigens. Neutrophils, unlike monocytes or macrophages, respond rapidly to invading antigens and readily fight phagocytosis. However, neutrophils lack the capacity to present antigens to lymphocytes. So, dili kay na sila ka-form og kanang. By the way, what part of the immune system are they?
Innate.
Innate. Very good because they cannot adapt or improve
Really,
their
sir.
performance
First
by
response
the macrophage presentation system. Next. Phagocytosis, destruction. Neutrophils are attracted to the site of infection in tissue by chemokines and chemical messengers that are released when tissues are damaged. In response, chemical signals
Naman
in
isa is
chemokines,
to,
vascular and endothelial cells induce expression of adhesion molecules. So by the way, the neutrophils are attracted to sites of infection through specific chemical mediators called chemokines. Okay? Chemokines, when the chemokine is released by a cell, that is called a cytokine. Okay? But not all chemokines are cytokines. Example, prostaglandin is not released by the cell, but it is released when the cell dies. So, that's autocoid na siya, ha? Okay ra? So far? Once the chemokines are the neutrophils will perform as when they're attracted by chemical mediators called chemostaxis. Okay? The chemostaxis will attract the neutrophils, and the neutrophils will jump from the intravascular space to the surrounding tissue in a process called diapedesis. It's called diapedesis because it uses a foot-like appendages using their cell membrane in order to escape into the surrounding tissue. Yeah. Okay? Neutrophils have limited energy and relatively short life. Elastasis and collagenases from these dying neutrophils serve as a powerful chemoattractant to another group of phagocytes called the macrophages. Okay? So, always remember students, because of the elastasis and the any structure where neutrophils are present, they often destroy. That's why they cause liquefactive necrosis. Okay? And the product of that liquefactive necrosis is your pus. Nana, right? Di ba? Kaya kita mo ng nana, namin kayo butana ng fruit salad. Right? Or sauce in yung shawarma. Yupi naman yun is. Okay, so one. Next. So this is the neutrophil. Okay. So they're orange, they're purple, right? So they're bio. Next. Eosinophils. By the way, what is formed by dead and dying neutrophils and cells? Pus. Pus or nana, huh?
Pas.
So, the process of making pus is called liquefactive necrosis. Huh? So, don't worry, you will learn more of that in your pathology next year.
Pathology pa.
Next time. Acidic stain, loving granules, primarily responsible for fighting parasitic infections. Eosinophils are red, right? So these are eosinophils, right? So very little, 0 to 2% in your normal CBC. Okay? So I don't know. Next. Basophils, basic staining granules. Basophils are necessary for immune system's natural response to invaders such as infectious germs. The body's response to allergen also involves basophils. When a potential harmful allergen enters the body, the immune system responds by trying to isolate and eliminate allergens. When responding to an allergen, basophils that sustain damage should release histamine, which is partially responsible for inflammation during an allergic reaction. Additional basophils may play a integral role in preventing blood clot due to the presence of heparin. So you already heard what is heparin, right? Do you know what heparin is in your pharma? What is heparin in your pharma? It's an anticoagulant. Okay? Anticoagulant. Next. So, by the way, do you know the difference between an anticoagulant and a fibrinolytic? Ano mo na?
Kabla ka, Philip.
Ano sa mga na? Anticoagulant o fibrinolytics? Fibrinolytics are the ones that destroy clots. Anticoagulant prevents the formation of clots. Okay? So, what next is, these are the basophils. They're often associated with allergies because of their affinity to IgE. Okay, next. Granulocytes are white blood cells that have no distinct granules in their cytoplasm. Lymphocytes have large single nuclei that occupy most of the cell. They are an important part of the body's immune system. Lymphocytes, monocytes are the largest of the white blood cells. Okay? Next. So we already know, right, that different parts of the body also have different types of macrophages. Von-Kupffer cells, rest cells, microglial cells, and as a rule, mostly they are called monocytes until they escape the tissue and they are activated by low oxygen tensions, except for alveolar macrophages that rely on high oxygen tension. Waka ka 22, wag mo. Kaya na, wala, mga mo.
Dili oy.
Check.
Ang perfusion.
Perfusion yung ganyan sa inyo, diffusion din.
Perfusion? Sure na? Ay, diffusion mo ito.
Mau gani na wrong side ko lang.
Okay, next time. Hello, please go everyday para mo.
Ay, Dok, na wrong spelling ang yun, Dok.
Ha?
Nasa spelling ang mga
Iwan na lang ninyo Nag-start sa Shekole, Ichungwe. Okay? By the way, your macrophages are part of what? Part of your immune system? They are actually part of both the innate and adaptive. They are innate because they can indiscriminately phagocytose, but they are adaptive because the adaptive process actually begins with their MHC type 1 or the macrophage presentation system. Okay? Huh? Yeah, I know, right? Oh, no. Oh, MHC. Macrophages are elongated, receptors that include major
Ocho ko na ritig sa inyo nagyatay.
for type 1 and 2 play a major role in
Nag-read
antigen
ko
recognition.
nasa
Okay?
ang ka na sa kung saan ka.
Ano naman?
Lagi.
Wala ito.
Next. Innate immune cells, predominantly macrophages, express all-like receptors that recognize specific molecules in the microscope pathogen-associated molecular pattern. So, a good example of that is yung mga LPS, lipopolysaccharides of gram-negative, and other that actually attract macrophages. Okay? The good thing about macrophages is that they're long-lived, unlike their neutrophil na counterpart. Next. So this is a neutrophil. Macrophage. Okay? So, kanang nailubot, mga macrophage. Next. Lymphocytes originated from the lymphoid tissue, responsible for the specific immune system. So meaning, we're already at the adaptive immune system, right? Kabawa mo sa pagpamita ang lymphocyte. So you get the slide, then you because of your ana-ana mo, then yung the other blood cells will run away. So the lymphocytes, because they're limping, they cannot run away. So by the time you look at the microscope, they're the only ones left. Okay? Diba? Like sa macrophage, good. Dami na siya sa Sunday. Macrophage ba siya? Fudge. Macrophage. Fudge
Ay,
Sunday.
Sunday. Abi na ko Sunday.
Ay,
Diba? Macrophage Sunday. Yeah. Diba? How could you forget ice cream? Right? Next.
balik na yung discussion pag ko.
They're usually specialized to perform attack a specific antigen responsible for the cellular immune response. They're divided into two distinct populations. For B lymphocytes, in mammals, they are coming from the bone marrow. For birds, they come from the furcia of Fabricius. Lymphocytes originated from the thymus and stimulated
The hormone.
and differentiated there. Okay? So, kabalo naman sa process, no? Process siya Batman, nagpili-pili, nagtinaktakay sa lymphocytes. Okay? Nanasan na siya. Okay? So, by the way, you can tell B from T by just looking at it, right? You need to do a biochemical test. Next. T lymphocytes, they are different in the thymus of an animal. They are very effective in phagocytosis and incorporating bacterial cells.
Last na naman.
Okay? Because they are part of the cell-mediated immunity. T lymphocyte next. Cytotoxic T cells, designed to kill abnormal cells. They're very useful in killing cells that are infected with viruses and they're also very good in killing cells that are malignant or cancerous. Okay? By the way, another word for a cancer cell is a malignant cell. Okay? They're also called natural NK cells. Okay? So, mo na ilagay nun, mag-fasting ka, you actually improve the function of your NK cells. So, you actually reduce the cancer. Okay? Next, cytotoxic T cells, often called killer T cells, destroy cells in your body that have been infected with antigen cancer cells and foreign cells which transplanted organs. Helper T cells direct the immune response of B cells and other bodies. Okay, next. Next is helper T cells. Okay?
Help siya.
Helper T. Actually, they not only help, they help coordinate the immune system of the body. In AIDS patient, you know what AIDS is, right? AIDS is the effect of HIV infection. Once the HIV causes depression of your immune system, you develop a condition called AIDS. Okay? AIDS is bad because it actually causes of course, wala immunity ang tao, right? During my time, AIDS is a death sentence when I was 22 years old. Right now, it's, thank God, they actually made tambal na.
Di, wala pa daw ko eh.
Pero at least, it's better than dying from it. Yeah, you just need to take the drug. Di ko
Prevent.
sure mo lang. You just take the drug and then the virus is not a big thing, right? So the only thing they need to worry about is obesity and at least na ano na ang anti-kwan. Pero naanam ko na cure.
Wala pa daw ko.
Actually guys, HIV is also related to FIV. FIV is feline immunodeficiency virus. Okay? They actually developed a cure for AIDS. They're developing a cure for AIDS by studying FIV and how it behaves in cats. Okay? Ooh, go back, man. So, the helper T is very important because a normal animal can have normal CBC, but without the helper T, they cannot actually mount an immune response. Okay? So they actually do not have an immune system na sakto. Okay? They can have normal CBC, normal population around. Okay? That's why in AIDS, HIV becomes AIDS when in a certain threshold of CD4 cells die. Okay? Next. Regulatory B cells, they help prevent overreaction of the immune system. So any immune-mediated diseases such as lupus, IMHA, they actually are suppressed by your suppressor. Okay, next. Memory leukocytes for storing information, very important. Since they are long-lived cells, they have very few mitochondria. Where is the mitochondria? Okay, long-lived man sila. Low mitochondria. Next. These are the lymphocytes. The NK cells or natural killer cells, the B and the T lymphocytes. Okay. Next. Now let us move to the humoral. They're called humoral because these cells create a specific type of protein called an antibody that likes to stay in the fluids of the animal. Okay? These antibodies is also, the measure of these antibodies is also called titer. Okay? Titers. Yes. So these are the antibodies are the products of your immunization. That is why if you want to test for the function of immunization, you need to check the titer. Okay? Kung sa may check for titer, ELISA. ELISA din na siya. Kay antibody, because ELISAs watch out for the antibodies and antibodies are mostly found in the blood. Okay? Next. There are two main populations, memory B cells and plasma cells.
Immunological test ang ELISA.
Immunological tests, yes. Okay, they also great for testing if effective in vaccination program.
Ay, layo Jin.
Okay, happy dito mahuman, yay!
Ay, matagal na labot
So,
sa
memory, responsible for memory and duration of immunity, has a very long lifespan. Okay? Next.
Hindi mo na diwat tayo, no?
Plasma cells, B lymphocytes, responsible for producing large amounts of antibodies. Next.
Yun lang po early K.
Antibodies are specialized proteins made by the immune system. They help the body fight against infections and disease or recognizing viruses, bacteria, and cancer cells. Each antibody binds a specific antigen associated with a native signal in the body. This antigen is also known as the antibody's target. Okay? So muna guys, it's Valentine's Day. Somewhere out there, if you're if you're an antigen, somewhere out there, God made an antibody just for you. Okay? Ayun mo kalimutan na ha. Somewhere out there, if you're an antigen, God made an antibody just for you. Okay? And when you meet each other, you're probably going to try to kill each other. Cute instead, yeah. Doesn't matter if it's brutal, it's still cute, right? Huh? Yeah, partner in crime. Okay? Continue. Next. So antibodies, they inactivate viruses. They act as opsonins. So opsonins are any substance that promote phagocytosis. And they act as physical barriers. So they actually coat the surface of epithelium in order to act like a barrier. Okay?
Namin na ito itong histulog.
Ano man? Ano man?
Okay rin.
Wala na daw.
Histolog na mo?
Ideally, ang laban mo kay wala man di ko.
Okay. Different antibodies IgG is the antibody isotope that most people think when you're talking about antibodies. Okay, anti-G. Okay, that go. G is general. G means goes anywhere because they can bypass the antibody placental barrier. G also means they are guinea, meaning they're very small. Okay. So also remember goat's milk because in ruminants they're the more dominant antibody. Goat's milk or G. Okay. There are multiple forms of IgG to circulate through the body. IgG is made up of only a single Ig unit, meaning that's why they're guinea or guinea pigs. Gagmay. Okay? So, they're commonly found in the blood and they're the most common, they're more generalized. Okay? Next. Sorry. IgA is an antibody that is found usually in mucosal surface. Remember what I said, that they coat the surface? It is IgA. Okay? They're also the most common immunoglobulin in carnivores. In the milk of carnivores, IgA din yan. Okay, next.
Ay, dog. Ako igagano kay iyang iro kay naanganak bagbulang Shih Tzu niya. Wala pa daw katutoy ang puppy.
Yes.
Oh,
Patay na.
Hindi, ang taon na.
24 hours, wakay na mag-colostrum.
Huwag kayo ng colostrum.
Unsay pwede substitute?
Bato ka ron? Bago lang din?
Uy, hulos yung buk.
Ano mo man nilang gitsagaan ng patutoy?
Di man ka ba
Oo, magtsaga sila. Matugas ng pabrino kiro. Hindi sila mo kuhan.
No, Philip, no.
No, sala na sing
Tawagan.
Hindi, bitaw pa. It's not the kuhan. Mura-murang wingon do. Na ayun eh, mag-irok ma'am. Wala ma'am. Ano man, hindi ka painom sa tampan. Wala ako ba mag-painom man na? Ha? Guys, you also need to set boundaries. Ha?
Uy.
Para ano? Saan mo pagkatambal mo na? Bisita ng tambal. Yung diagnostic test. Ano, hindi maayo. Hindi ka pasingan na. Saan ka ayaw mo? Pwede mong tambal. Amen. Amen. Imagine. Okay?
Ito, nasa question.
Ay, open ang baba niya ana sa tutoy.
Oo, or ganito nila ko. Naman ko na gitawa og routing reflex. Butang ni mo anang baba ng tiyok. Magalaana na siya.
Wala daw. Yari dingi mo po.
Ayun, ganang. Kada lang, idoon na dyan. Even if you try your finger, yan na. Ha?
Dili daw.
Ay, naalagin na. Pagtsaga si Loin mo. Tugag pa, buhig, hayop.
Hala.
Inyo.
Inana jud ko na. Ano yung dili inyo God do the time, don't do the crime.
Mura na.
Okay?
Kasi ikaw.
So IgM is the monster. It's big. It's maguna ang abot. Malaki, maguna ang abot. Monster. It's a pentamer. So meaning it's made up of 5 IgG subunits, right? Produced after a pathogenous entered body. It has a very high ability. In other words, sticks very strongly to its target. IgM is one. In early stage of infection, sometimes appears with infection because reactivated, such as those of herpes. Okay? And of course, itong favorite na antibody responsible for allergy. So, IgE ha. Ganun, it reminds me of the king. You know who the king is?
Mufasa.
Michael Jackson. Oh yeah, like.
Wala, injury na kang baby.
Ba, sino?
Kita ba ito na sa Super Bowl eh?
Basta strange. Kasi, like every time mag-study ko, pero amo.
Sad kayo kung magamatay ni King.
Ay, iring ko.
Di ba no? Talented kayo dito.
Grabe ang aura niya.
Nabi siya yung movie.
Kasi,
What movie?
Michael Jackson?
Oh, nagkam siya movie.
Like, karon bago, di ba?
dito ko,
Ano
uy.
siya?
Yeah, nasa yung movie, kita sa iyang nephew. Ay, niece, nephew lagi.
Yeah, kamuha na ko sa Not Netflix.
Wala, sa sine.
Sige lang, I will find a way. Pirate Bay. Okay? So, IgE is antibodies responsible for allergic
Mas train na
response.
ako,
It
ipahilap.
is mostly found in the lungs, skin, and mucous membranes. When IgE binds on the reagent, it starts with the reaction. It is the reaction that causes
Next start ko push up kay demonstrate na siya.
Okay, so IgE. Next. Parang.
Mana, yes! Thank you, Lord!
Napay sunod.
Ay,
Wala man to.
IGD!
Napay sunod. Next.
Oh my God. It's a
Last na lang.
But okay. IgE is important
Na, this
in
muscles,
early stages
really?
of immune response bound to B cells. That
Ay,
does not circulate instead
And
it
this
signals
muscles,
those cells to become active. It is the least understood of all the antibody types.
Ano man mo na
Next.
D4D ko no.
Okay na.
yay!
Wala. Thank you, Lord! Snake Queen!